It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the Bryant University's assistant football coach, Ian O'Malley. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks, Brandon. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to get started in coaching in college football?
Well, I started to develop an interest in football when I was in second grade, and I just watching it all the years. There was one night it hit me when I was in eighth grade that I wanted to coach, and when it hit me like a ton of bricks. And so, kind of everything since then uh, has been geared toward everything in my life. Essentially, has been geared towards how can I be the best coach that I can be.
What was it like getting started in your coaching career and coaching at John Walls?
So I actually started at my high school alma mater, Cranston High School West. I had been the team manager my junior and senior year, the football team manager my junior and senior year of high school, and I asked my head coach when I was graduating if I could become, a coach on the staff, and he said yes, and I would start with the freshmen, and I did that for 3 years and coached a different position each year. And then I went to Johnson & Wales, which was my college alma mater, and as the first assistant coach in the history of that program, uh, and was able to help my classmates get that off the ground.
Of course, what was that like balancing going to college at John Walls and becoming a coach at the same time?
Well, it was different, but it wasn't anything that was it never felt like it was something that was so much harder than it should have been. It it was there was an understanding there that there's because all of us on the coaching staff at the time were students. So it wasn't like there was this big age gap like you see at every other level of coaching football or every other place I've been where there's an age gap between the coaches and the players. So we developed our culture around respect me, respect you. And so, there was an understanding there that, players weren't playing for us or working for us. They were working with us and playing for each other.
How was that experience like getting to coach on the club football level?
It didn't feel mainstream in the sense that if a player had to, if he had to miss practice because he had class or he had to miss practice because he had to go to work, you had to let that happen. But it was also, and then the other part of that was, players had to play dues because it was a club. You had to kind of pay to be a part of it. But when you took that part away and you just looked at the football aspect of it, we ran it like a regular program, and our practices were organized, and we had a practice plan, and we ran an offense and a defense and special teams that were carefully calculated and fit the talent that we had, as well as fit what we knew from the previous programs we'd been in.
Of course, what was your experience like becoming a coach for them and going to the conference championship in 2015, 2018?
So my third day of my freshman year of college, we were doing an icebreaker in intro to business class. And, I got up in front of the room and said, I wanted to be a career football coach. And the person sitting behind me said that they wanted to bring football to Johnson Wales University. And we connected at the end of that class, and he said, hey, if I get this program here, would you help us coach? And I said, well, we're in our season, which at that time was my first season ever coaching. And I've always had a rule my entire career that I don't talk about other jobs during my season. I don't think that's fair to the players. I don't think that's fair to the coaches. if I was giving any amount of focus to a team that wasn't ours. And so, I told him that, once our season's over and you get this off the ground, then we could talk about it. And he said, okay. And he ended up getting the program approved 2 years later. And when he got it approved, it was in November of 2016. And, we were getting ready to go to a state championship game that year. And so I said, congratulations getting the program off the ground, but we're still in our season. So unfortunately, I still can't talk about that. And, he asked me, all right, when's your season's over? I said, well, I want to give it till after Thanksgiving because, our varsity season went until then. And so he said, all right, I'll call you after Thanksgiving. So he reached out to me after Thanksgiving and he said, look, we're having an interest meeting Wednesday, December 7th. Please show up to the meeting if you're interested and would like to talk with you further about being our defensive coordinator and secondary coach. I said, all right, thank you very much. I'll show up to the meeting. And I showed up to the meeting. I bought in right away. And I definitely had more of an interest in building than being a part of something that was already built. I feel like it's more organic that way. And, it's something that I could, when you take part in something that's built, there were people who built it before you. And, but when you get into the building, I could say that I really helped build this. And, it's easy to win. It's harder to find a way to win. And, when at Johnson Wales, I knew we were going to have to find ways to win, and we did. And, I didn't sign a contract right away, but I basically had a handshake agreement that I was going to come and be the defensive coordinator and secondary coach at Johnson Wales, and I would be the first one in its history. And, we started that in 2017 was our first year as a program. And unfortunately, we were on probation that year because we couldn't get a head coach hired. But they did give us a showcase game. The university gave us a showcase game a month after we finally got a head coach hired. And they said, if you win the showcase game, we'll repeal the probation and we'll give you the 2018 season. And we went and played the showcase game. We won 32-8, and defensively we forced 5 turnovers and didn't allow a touchdown in the second half. So obviously we got that probation taken away, and we were put in the North Atlantic Conference of the National Club Football Association 2018. And we found a way to get into the conference championship game that year. And it took a lot of resiliency from everybody involved because, when you're building something new, it's always an uphill battle. And everything we did was the first thing that had ever happened. It was the first time that we'd ever had pads. It was the first time we had ever had a practice. It was the first time, we'd ever had a game. It was the first time we had a bus trip. It was the first time we had an away game. And so everything was the first we had ever done. And it was a lot of fun. And you know what? When you're 21, 22 years old and you're doing things that people say you can't do, and it's a heck of a lot of fun.
What was that feeling like becoming the co-founder of the John Walls Football Club?
It was, I didn't give as much thought to that as some other people did. People would call me a founding father of the program, and I didn't really ever talk about that until after I had left. But it was just about, it was about the building. It was about the upward trajectory of the program every day. And it was about just, what do we need to do to keep building on what we had started.
What was your experience like leaving John Walls to go to Dean College to become the secondary coach?
Wow. So during the 2018 season, we were kind of in flux because our head coach had resigned a month before fall camp had started. And so then I was the interim head coach through fall camp and through the first 2 games of the season. And then we started 2-0. And then Thursday night before our 3rd game, we were informed that our permanent head coach was hired, which we did not know was going to happen. And, that person came in and, he had told us that, after the season, he was going to be making some changes, and those changes involved, kind of the way we did things. And that's typical for a new head coach that comes in. It's just, they come in and they do what they think is best. And so we ended up going to the championship game in 2018, and we lost that game. And, I knew that night after the game that was going to be my last game at Johnston Wales. And I then went on the job search and found a position at another school that I wanted to accept. And at the 11th hour, I was told that I could not accept that position after I had resigned my post at Johnston Wales. So I was out of a job for a few months, and that was it was a difficult time. And I decided to go back to Johnston Wales and finish my sports management degree. I had already had a business degree from Johnston Wales, but I had started taking sports management classes as I was finishing my business degree. So I went to go finish my sports management degree. And after I started an internship with our SID, I was then told about an opportunity at Dean to be an analyst. And I called the defensive coordinator at the time that night and said I was interested in what I was about. And they brought me in for an interview the following week. I accepted, and we were ready to rock and roll. And I was the defensive quality control analyst in 2019, and we ended up winning a conference championship there in the Eastern Collegiate Football Conference. And then after that, the secondary coach left, and so I then was promoted to secondary coach.
Of course, during your time at Dean College, what were some of your accomplishments as a secondary coach and defensive quality coordinator?
So at Dean, I had, as soon as I got promoted March 4th, and then COVID, March 4th of 2020, and then COVID shut everything down on March 13th. So somehow I never actually coached a game as the secondary coach at Dean. But what I did do, I had to manage, or not even I had to, but I helped our players manage their academics and, some things going on personally while the pandemic was going on. And there was a lot of change going on at once, and a lot of newness, I guess is the most positive way I can say it. And so just anytime I could be a helping hand is what I attempted to do. And I didn't, it was the one time in my career I never spent any time coming down on anybody. That I didn't want to blow anything out of proportion, because there was something much more serious going on that led to other things that were much more serious. And so at that point, it was all about positivity and trying to foster as much positivity as possible.
Of course, how did your time at John Wells and Dean help you to where you are now at Bryant University?
I think just staying positive in the face of adversity, and just, always finding a way to move on to the next right action. There's always times where, I had to, there's times where, as an analyst or as a young position coach, your head coach or your coordinator are going to get on you about stuff, just like us as coaches are going to get on our players about stuff. But just no matter what, you got to move on to the next right action. And what that takes is your best effort and focus. And so that was really what I focused on, and is just always being in the moment, and just always, no matter what happens, just move on to the next right action. Just coach yells at you, just move on. If you do something that wasn't correct, figure out how to fix it and move on. Because dwelling on anything doesn't help, because if you dwell on one play, it might affect the next three. And so we don't want to lose three. We don't want to lose 4 plays. We'd rather have 3 really good plays. And so that's what I keep telling my players now, or telling our players now, is, just move on to the next right action and just play with your best effort and focus. And if you do those things and treat people as best you can, that's something that I always have to remind myself. Not saying that I have an issue treating people correctly, but in the face of trying to be my best, I get angry, and, there's times where I got to tone that down a little bit.
What are some of your roles and responsibility as a defensive coordinator analyst?
Well, as a quality control analyst, you're breaking down film, and you are I'm constantly being asked to do things that you'd never know that a football coach would have to do. Uh, I last week, all right, one of my other roles is chief of staff at Bryant. And so as the chief of staff, last week I had to assign seating, assign what buses everybody was going to be on our bus trip to Robert Morris University for our last game. Because usually we take 2 buses if we're taking a bus trip to an away game. And, last week we took 3 to give our guys some space on the long trip. And, there was no plan as to where people were going to sit. So I said, all right, well, we got to make sure that we have a plan so that way we can keep track of attendance. And so that was something that I did. And, in 2021, when I was primarily the QC, I was I was dressed in the field for practice, and then, I kind of passed that on to the next QCs, kind of gave some of those responsibilities away as, I moved forward. We brought new people in, and, I think it's good for young coaches to take ownership of hard work, take ownership of things that other people don't want to do, because I think the more ownership a younger coach can take of things they don't want to do, the faster they get to own things that they want to do. And so, I took ownership of dressing the field every day. I took ownership of passing out snack during training camp. I took ownership of tagging the film, making sure that was done correctly. And I also took ownership of things that were not really for me to do. If nobody else wanted to do them, I did them. And, I that's something that I will never lose. And that's something that I always want to pass off onto the next generation of young coaches that follow me.
What was that feeling like when you got promoted to become the assistant coach and join the coaching staff?
Well, I was told about an opportunity to interview for a promotion, remember, on Good Friday, and then I didn't get interviewed for a month. So went through the last week of spring ball, and then the next 3 weeks of preparing for an interview. And preparing for an interview is, rather grueling, but I found ways to make it fun and stay positive. And, I got promoted, or I interviewed for the job and didn't get the job that I wanted, but I ended up getting a different job. And they, our head coach and defensive coordinator found a role for me that, it found a way to keep me there while also giving me more responsibility, and allowed me to work with our zips, which is, our nickel safeties. We set those guys to the field, and gave me an opportunity to coach those guys. And I was very excited to coach those guys. And so as soon as I got that, I went from zero. I felt like I went from zero to hero, and ended up being a great experience for me.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture that you've helped build for the Bryant University's football program?
Well, I'd say that Bryant was probably furthest along in the places that I had gotten to. So I don't know if I've necessarily helped build the culture. I think I've helped further it. And so really our culture is all about expect to win. That's what we talk about, is expect to win, where, no matter who we're playing, we got to expect to win that game. We play an FBS opponent every year. And as an FCS school, that's, usually those are money games, where somebody else would pay us to come play the game. We treated those games like, hey, we're on the field, we get a chance to win the game, and we're going to expect to win the game. And we haven't done it yet, but we're on the right track to doing so. And so, that's what we believe in. And the way we expect to win the way that we, the way that we build that is by competing every day. During spring ball, we have one-on-ones at the 50-yard line during every practice, whether it's receiver, DB, O-line, D-line, right, linebacker, running back. We're going to put you in front of the whole team, and it's you versus somebody else, and you got to find a way to win. And we do that to foster that competitiveness, so that way when we're on ESPN on Saturdays, we're not intimidated by the moment.
Who are some of the teams that you face in your conference each week?
So we actually just changed conferences in 2022. We moved into the Big South, where we faced Gardner Webb, who won the conference, and North Carolina A&T, who was our first conference opponent. We finished our season with Robert Morris, and before that, we played Campbell University as well as Charleston Southern.
Was that like, obviously, getting to play some of those teams like Campbell, Charleston Southern, and Gardner Webb?
It's like it was. We were facing the best of the best every week. Everybody has big linemen and speed at receiver and tough running backs and quarterbacks that can spin it. So we had to be at our best every week, and we couldn't take anything for granted.
How do you prepare for some of those teams like Gardner Webb and Campbell?
Practice fast. We always make sure that we try to practice no huddle on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, about 2 to 3 plays each week, to where, if we know a team is going to run an RPO, which is a run pass option, where they have an option to either run or pass the ball, we'll run the running play and then get right back on, have the scout team get right back on the ball and throw the passing play right off it. And, we'll make sure we practice that fast. And, and knowing how to do that comes from the time game planning that we do on Sundays and Mondays. Staying Sunday nights and making sure that we have all our data correct. And then on Mondays, watching the film as a staff, making sure we have the right plan for their run game, and then finding, the plan for how we're going to cover their passing game off of that.
What is the game day atmosphere like when you have teams like Campbell and Gardner Webb coming into home?
Our Bryant fans are crazy. They're the best. They get there hours before the game, and you're tailgating, and you smell the grills cooking, and see them playing cornhole and other games, and they got their Bryant gear on, and they got their tent set up, and they're ready to cheer us on and watch us win the game.
What does the recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes looking to play college football?
Well, it starts with, it starts with us finding the guys in our area. So on just about every staff that I've been on, you have areas that are assigned to you by the recruiting coordinator. And as an area coach, it's on you to find the best players in your area at every position. And then it's on the area coaches to let the position coaches know that these are the best players, at your position in my area. And then you have to kind of put your recruiting board together that way as a position coach. And, with the proper information, and making sure that, you have their transcript, how much money they're going to be getting in financial aid, and how much of that is going to be an academic or an athletic based scholarship, and making sure we have all that information. So when the head coach asks you, what do you know about these players? Coach, I know about X, Y, and Z. And so that's how it is on our end. And then it's, just reaching out to players on Twitter. And obviously you get a lot of more players reach out to us than we end up having to reach out to. And so, it's just making sure that as a coach, when you're recruiting, you're building as many positive relationships as you can with both players and also the high school coaches, so that way you can keep going back to those schools.
Of course, when on the road, what are some of the things that you look at in those prospective student athletes?
Well, character is always number one. Can we trust that you're going to do the things that you're supposed to do, or the things that you need to do in order to be the best you can be? And then we're looking for, a certain level of size and speed at each position. And then, we also, especially defensively and in the secondary, we look for guys that, the term we like to use is multiple lives. Can you play? Are you a corner that can also play safety? Are you a safety that can also play into the boundary? And then also, can you play our nickel safety? And so we want guys that, there's a lot of crossover in what we do defensively. So we want guys that can be able to play multiple positions.
Of course, when those prospective student athletes come on the official visit, what does that look like for those prospective student athletes?
Well, we like to give them the whole Bryant experience. So we're going to make sure that we show you. We're going to make sure that we show you all the fun stuff, and the field and the weight room, and get your picture taken, and our indoor facility, which is only one of 3 120-yard indoor facilities in all of New England. And we're going to show you our offices, and let you watch the film of your position, so that way you can see, you know, how you're going to play on the field with us. But then we also go through some of the, you know, the things that mom and dad want to know about, which are academics and, you know, where you'll be eating and where you'll be sleeping and things of those nature. And then, you know, we like to take you out to dinner as well, and, you know, at a nicer place. And then we also want to show you our, you know, our facilities on campus in terms of meals as well.
How's that feeling like as a assistant coach, getting to see those players put on that football jersey and represent Bryant?
Oh, game day is the best. Game day is the best because it's everything you work for all week, players and coaches. And then it's the moment that for 60 minutes, you get to put everything that we've talked about, everything we've done all week on the field into a 60-minute performance. And we're always really proud of the guys too. That's the best part is, you know, the best part of the coaching profession is the players.
While on the official visit, what is that feeling like, getting to see them put on that jersey and fall in love with the colors of Bryant University?
That's you know, that's probably always one of the highlights of the official visit, especially for the high school guys that we're recruiting. You know, getting it, because they end up loving it, and, you know, they get to put the colors on. And, you know, for us, we're black and gold, so we wear some pretty good football colors. And it's always, you know, you put the music on in the locker room, and some of the veteran players who like to be around on those visits, they like flickering the lights and making it look, you know, making it look a lot of fun.
What advice would you give those high school athletes looking to play college football?
Be the best version of yourself every day. You know, just and the same thing I tell our guys is just play with your best effort and focus and move on to the next right action, because it's oftentimes not going to be one event or one moment that's going to get you to where you want to be. It's going to be stacking the days and then stacking the weeks of doing the best I can each day and treating people as best I can each day.
What advice would you give those college athletes that are looking to play professional football, whether it's the NFL or the XFL?
Same thing. And always and keep trying to find ways to improve.
What advice would you give future college coaches looking to get started in coaching in college football?
Be willing to do what others don't. Be willing to do what others won't, and stack that on top of having your best effort and focus and moving on to the next right action. That, you know, I think with me, you know, it takes, right, and like I talked about, be willing to dress the field, be willing to assign seats on the bus, be willing to do meal checks and pass out snack and things of that nature, and set the clock for practice. And because a person who's willing to do those things and take pride in it and take ownership of it, that person will not have a problem when they get to, they won't have a problem doing everything they need to do and putting maximum effort into the things they want to do if they do the things that they are tasked to do.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media along with the Bryant football program at?
So my Twitter is at Coach O'Malley _. And then our Bryant football, if you just search Bryant football on Twitter, you'll find us.
Thank you again, Coach Ian O'Malley, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Bryant University as the assistant coach.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on your program.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Ian O'Malley, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you very much.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.